there. I'm your host, Leslie Randolph. I'm a self-confidence coach for teenage girls and the self-confidence coach you wish you had as a teen. Honestly, I'm the self-confidence coach I wish I had as a teen because I know I could have saved myself and my mother a whole lot of heartache if I'd only known then what I know now. I hope to save you some of that suffering by sharing the lessons I learned late in life right here on Why Didn't They Tell Us? Welcome to the show.
Hey, happy people. Welcome back to Why Didn't They Tell Us? So excited to be back in the room with you and so excited for today's show because I'm so excited about today's guest who is going to be educating us on all things teen. The talk, what's going on with our teens and their minds and their bodies, and how we can support and empower them through these sometimes tumultuous years. Dr. Lisa Klein is a practicing pediatrician at Child Health Associates, PC, the co-author of Celebrate Your Body Too, and the co-founder of Turning Teen. Turning Teen empowers parents, educators, and trusted community leaders to help them start the conversation about puberty and sexual health with pediatrician-developed educational programs. Created by medical and mental health professionals, Turning Teen makes it easier to talk about bodies, puberty, and sex. The curriculum helps adults start conversations with their children, whether at home, in school, or other safe community settings. Turning Teen recognizes that conversations about sexual health are vital to child's healthy growth and development. By providing direct, comprehensive, and honest information about puberty, sexuality, social pressures, and mental health, Turning Teen empowers tweens to become more self-assured teens and, in turn, more capable and confident adults. Dr. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Leslie. I love listening to your show, and now I get to be a guest. This is fun.
Well, and I love listening to you, so I'm so excited that these worlds are coming together for us.
They have definitely collided in multiple ways behind the scenes. I love it.
Absolutely, because we share a mission and we share a message that we want our tweens and teens to grow up to be these incredible, successful adults. And it starts by laying the foundation in these formative years.
Absolutely. Foundation, that's a great word, I think, to get us started today, because we, meaning parents and educators and resourceful, right, people in our community and whatever role we play, need to all help be a piece to laying that foundation in this ever-changing, often confusing world that we're living in.
Totally. And I would venture to say no time more confusing than those tween and teen years when that brain is still kind of a construction zone and there are more questions than there are answers. And I love that you're equipping parents and, adults to help teens figure all that out. So let's get it started. How did Turning Teen come to be?
So Turning Teen was created by myself, a pediatrician, as you said, and another physician friend of mine, Dr. Carrie Leff, a colleague, friend, who's also a pediatrician, but she also happens to be an internist and women's health expert. And she has kids the same age as mine, and our oldest started entering these tween puberty years. And our friends kept coming to us and saying like, oh, what should I say? Or, oh, how can, I breach the subject with them about their bodies or periods or puberty or everything tween confusing, right? Social media obviously was a big thing and taking off. And just being a parent is so hard. So then we go to our office and you say the word puberty, and even amazing, educated, loving, wonderful, resourceful parents often look like deer in headlights when you're like, is your kid in puberty? Like, have you talked about puberty? And we're like, something's kind of missing. Where are those resources for us as providers and us as parents? And Turning Teen was born in a coffee shop. Carrie and I over a latte. And we started in family rooms with like a few people and like magnetic boards and arts and crafts, construction paper of uterus, and how things work. And then started booking community centers and doing little programs. And now we travel across the country and work with schools and do online programming. It feels good. It feels good what we do. We call it our passion project turned into a business, because literally that's what it is.
So good. It's so good. And I love that it was born in a coffee shop, but also born out of necessity, that you saw this gap and a way that parents were challenged. And how do we talk to our kids? And when do we talk to our kids? These are still questions I have, because between us, my son is entering 5th grade, or he's in 5th grade this year. And he's so excited about this year because he's getting the talk. This is when they're having the talk. There's plenty of talks happening at home, but he's excited to do it there. So you talk about the talk. When are we having the talk? What are these different talks, and when should we be having them with our kids?
Okay, Leslie, you opened the box. So let's try to dissect it a little. The talk, I want everyone to remember, is never just one talk. Okay, so don't feel stressed that it has to be the talk. I think that is, a little bit of like the old school way of thinking. And unfortunately, it's still how it's kind of presented in school, right? You're like, oh, good, school is going to do the talk. But one is parents. Every school has a different curriculum. Many schools are not required. There's state by state variations who's even required to do this kind of education. And sometimes the talk for schools is extraordinarily out of order. It's like sexual transmitted infections and HIV and bloodborne issues, and not really like, hey, you want to learn about your body parts first? So I want the talks, plural, to start as young as you can. So if you're listening and you have multiple kids and you're a younger parent with young kids, start the talks about naming body parts. Okay, like body training, naming proper body parts. We have ears, nose, legs, and we have breasts and vulvas and penis, right? Like that's step one. Many of you listening are obviously in Leslie's phase, normal, common. This is the most common time we start thinking about these talks. And open communication. A good way is like, hey, dude, you're starting this curriculum at school. What do you already know? Like, tell me what you know, and it's silly and it's laughable and that's cool. And that's fine. Great time for talks in the car when you're not staring face to face. If you think you have a kid who's more uncomfortable rather than thinking it's humorous and cool. Scientific, science-based, right? Like be very matter of fact. This is science. We're not having the sex talk before having like what happens to our body as it changes talk. Now, you can have the sex talk if they're learning on the playground and from older siblings and from porn and YouTube. Sometimes the talks are out of order, no problem, but it all goes back to the basics. So that's where I'm starting. Now you ask me where to elaborate.
I love the permission that you've given us of the talks, because I think also, the first questions came well before, in my household, well before there were any talks. And I felt like, okay, this is my opportunity to be really honest. And like you said, very scientific based. They were laughing. I laughed with them. I go, I know this can sometimes be an uncomfortable conversation to have. But I think if we put this pressure on, it's like this, well, it's pressure. And it's also like, oh, that's done. We never need to talk about that again. But it's constantly evolving and it's constantly changing. And that curiosity just keeps growing as they get older.
Yes. And you can help squash some of the curiosity of them searching for answers, Googling things, asking friends if you're their resource. Now, I am not expecting anybody to have all the answers. You are going to get asked questions that either you're so off guard that you can say, I love your question and I need to ask Dr. Lisa, or I need to look in a book first. as to how to answer that question good for you, because I want to get you good information. And that could be a way for you to just take a minute and breathe and not reinvent the wheel, right? We're not all experts. I don't know everything you know and you do, Leslie. You don't know everything I do, right? And we need to utilize our resources, get appropriate counseling, instruction, podcast listening, book reading, have the resource in hand so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay. And help yourself help your child in terms of how to start and have some of these talks and get their questions answered. But I love saying, well, what do you know? Let's elaborate on what you know. Because sometimes we think we need to go into this huge explanation, and they just want one little tidbit, which is a great start.
And also a big relief for all of us, right? That we don't, to your point, we don't need to have all the answers. And we also don't need to be sitting down and doing a 90-minute lecture on where babies come from, or what the lifespan of puberty. Meet them where they are.
Shame-free, that's a big word, a big message I like to share. Okay. Shame-free, science-based, open and honest. When they're younger and you start this younger, it just makes the rest easier. But don't fear everybody that's listening and has a 16-year-old who still needs to tackle this, right? Like, that's okay. You start with where you're starting. They have some foundation. You're just building and improving it for further conversations down the road. I'm a parent of 16 and 19-year-olds. I'm here to tell you, it only gets more confusing. It only gets harder. The conversations only get bigger. So if they're younger and you're talking about puberty or, what is traditional intercourse, sex, there's no emotion in that for the young ones. It's not sexual if you have a young kid. We as adults put that sexuality and emotional piece into it. For a young kid, talking about sex for a traditional talk, right, before they're intimate or have crushes or anything like that, it's like, a mommy bear and a daddy bear came together, had a baby bear. That's a science-based talk, like you're at the zoo. So careful inflicting your own emotion into the conversation if it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't always have to be awkward. It's learning.
Yeah, I love that. Make it fact-based, based in science, not emotional. And certainly we don't need to bring sexuality into it when we're conveyors of facts at a certain point.
Yeah, especially when they're young. Now, obviously, emotion and life stories, and if they're dating and if they're in high school, I mean, it always depends on your circumstance, but take it back to the basics. Take your big deep breath. Okay, you can do this, and you can use resources to do this, whether it's videos you've previewed to watch together, whether it's a book you use to read together. There are ways to help you help your kid.
And turning teen is absolutely one of them. When you go to Dr. Lisa's website, you are just so equipped with so many tools and so many conversations and so many topics. I mean, that also is a roadmap of what do I need to know? What should I be talking about? And so I want to look at some of those topics that you tackle over on Turning Teen, because I think that they're critical when we think about, over here, we talk about confidence a lot. When we think about confidence, and one of the courses that really stood out to me was, this mind-body connection and how to help our teens, because it's not just physical changes. There are major mental and emotional changes happening through puberty, those teen years up until, 25. And then, you get to our age and we're feeling changes too.
I love that you said that, right? Keep them alive till 25 is the motto, the joke. I think it's so important for parents to realize, not when we're just talking about physical changes, which happen so early, right? So puberty for females can start at age 8, often does. Males' puberty tends to happen a little after the females, age 10 plus. Some of them don't even hit it till high school, whereas a lot of the females are done with puberty and getting their period by high school. So the timing of the conversation may differ based on who's living in your house and growing up, who they're friends with and growing up with. But it's so, important to think about that mind body, the mind construction, as you say, all those changes that they don't have great executive function. Their emotional centers are huge, right? Leslie and we could talk about their amygdala, their emotional center. We like to talk about how their brain develops from the inside out. Okay, so your emotional centers are huge and big when you're a teenager. It's why, we don't make the best decisions and we make them based on emotion a lot. And then their executive function center at the outside in the front of their brain, it's developing back to front, is the last to come online and join Wi-Fi. Their Wi-Fi connection is not great despite all their time on Wi-Fi. So we need to definitely remember who our audience is and how they're going to make mistakes. They're going to mess up. They're not going to remember everything we said. And their mind and body are all in turmoil and all being built and wired. And we need to be patient, which is not easy.
No. Sometimes one of the mom mantras that I repeat back to myself, and I offer this to any listener, is like how incredibly age appropriate this is. To just remind myself that, like, of course, as you said, they're making mistakes. They're figuring it out. They are testing boundaries. Now, as a mom, I want to like kind of flip my lid, but as a mom that's trying very hard to be intentional, I'm like, oh, this is so age appropriate. It just gives me that moment to take a breath before I respond to the behavior.
Yes. And give yourself grace. I'm sure you tell your clients and listeners, I fly off the handle. I'm a mom. Like I'm supposed to, right? We are not perfect. Our kids are not perfect. If we can model and agree, hey, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have yelled. I overreacted, or I want to talk to you about what happened in a different way because I didn't approach it right. That will give your kid the opportunity to say things like that to you one day. Hey, I messed up, but I want to tell you how it happened. I want to redo. I want the chance to ask for forgiveness. We need to role model that mind body piece too.
1000%. And if we think about that mind body connection, a lot of times, because we are all still perfectly imperfect humans figuring it out, we let our emotions, if we don't take that breath, if we don't remind ourselves like, oh, this is so normal, we can respond emotionally, which is such typical teen behavior. It is very impulsive. It is very, heated in the moment. It's like you got that trigger and then you're activated.
Right.
And so I think when we empower our teens, and I love that that's what Turning Teen does, when we empower them with knowledge, it then gives them also that sort of, I called it my mom mantra, that moment of like, oh, of course I'm feeling this way. Of course I have such big emotions.
Yeah. So every talk we do, even the puberty talks, body basics for girls and body basics for boys, all of our talks, even the second female talk we do about taking care of our puberty changes, they all have an emotional part of our curriculum. We talk about, why do our emotions feel big being shouted out of a megaphone, right? We talk about how do we handle that? What are consequences of emotional reactions? Just identifying and naming our emotion. Like why on the front page of my website for Turning Teen, which is all about puberty, sex, teen stuff, is there a picture with emojis? Why? Because we have to manage our emotions through the physical process of puberty. And it's a huge part of what we do and like to talk about because we all need help with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't make that connection to the emojis. Yes, it makes such sense.
I know. Some people are like, why isn't there a uterus on the front page? Why isn't there whatever? And, I'm just we use a lot of modern things in our talk. We do a lot of interactive parts in our talks. And again, we have to identify with the age group we're talking to And that's a hot thing right now for all of us on our, devices and how we talk with emojis. And so that emotional mind body piece is vital to all of these conversations.
Yeah. I'm going to jump around a little bit because you just said something that brought me back even to the beginning of our conversation of like, we got to meet them where they are. We're using language and tools and even visuals that speak to teens and tweens. I assume I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. Would you recommend, is if we talk about puberty, but then as they're getting into high school and later years, sex and consent, do you recommend a proactive or reactive stance for those conversations?
Proactive if possible. Okay. We don't live in a perfect world. We don't parent perfectly. Maybe we have 2 or 3 kids and we did it this way with our oldest, but now times are changed. Listening to this podcast, more resources available to be proactive, be proactive. And you mentioned consent. So we teach consent to the 8-year-olds. We don't teach consent to the 8-year-olds in our body basics talks in terms of how we tend to think of it about sex. We teach consent about what does that mean? It's when 2 people agree on the same thing. So we teach it in terms of, do you want a hug or a high five when the stranger that you barely know comes to Thanksgiving dinner and you maybe aren't a hugger and that makes you feel yucky, right? That intuition. We talk about intuition. We talk about rules for body safety is a huge piece of these conversations. But again, you have to have the basics first. You have to have the verbiage. You have to be able to name your body parts. You have to be able to know what is that uncomfortable, icky feeling that should I give consent for something or should I not? Because when you give this language all along, we talk to them, you can't play catch with someone without consent or you have no one throwing the ball back to you, right? It's 2-way. So to introduce these topics, this verbiage young, you are being proactive because then when you talk about being physically intimate with someone, whether you're holding hands with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or you're kissing, or you're having sex, all of that consent is like built into your mindset. It's built into your vocabulary. It's built into your daily practices.
I love that. Yeah, we're already working with tools that we already know how to use because we started that conversation so young. Mm-hmm. So good. So good. Well, thank you for that. I knew the answer was proactive, but needed to hear it said because I think
and have no fear. I have this like guilt. Can you tell that when we're talking to people who are listening going, oh no, I missed the boat on that. And I missed the boat on that. It's okay. You have to start somewhere. And you've started if you're listening right now. So pick up where you can. It's never too late, right? Never too late to educate.
One of my favorite mom mantras, it's never too late. Today is a great day to have a conversation and to start it with, what do you know? And I also think the invitation of like, what do you want to know? Are there any questions?
Right.
One of the others.
Be their person, be their resource. Because if you're not, the internet is.
Oh, then that is the perfect segue, the internet. I think that is a conversation and a topic that we are all feeling so overwhelmed and frankly, as parents, sometimes powerless against. We are all being inundated right now in my book club and in my mom circles of the anxious generation. And now this fear that we have led our children astray. Give us some good news, Dr. Lisa. What can we do?
Well, that's a tall order you didn't prepare me for.
No pressure.
Okay. I love social media, not going to lie, because I think there is some good for the right age and an appropriate brain to utilize it for good, connecting with other people. That's just the reality of how some people stay in touch. And seeing what's going on with people's lives without always having the time for a phone call. What do I really love it for professionally and personally is connection with learning. Like I can follow great role models on social media. I can learn and see what other doctors and influencers and teen experts and right, coaches and people that work in the same circle are up to. Now, the younger generation, our tweens and teens, again, don't have the proper brain executive function to totally know when it's enough, when to turn it off, when they need to report inappropriate things. They aren't using it for all the amazing things it could be. So I think that it's a fine line. I think the longer you can wait to give them access, the better. I think if they're already on it, super hard to take it away. So I'm not I'm not saying you got to do that, but I think we can teach them how to do better on it. So I like to give the example of the Olympics just happened. I mean, I would sit in the office and say, hey, what are your rules for social media? What are your rules for your phone? Don't have it in your room, unplug at night, give yourself a limit. Who do you follow? Like, what do you do on social media? And none of them were watching the Olympics. None of them were following Alona Mayher. Sorry, Alona, I never know how to say her last name. The rugby player who is strong and fierce and proud of her body, which can do amazing things and has her own insecurities as an Olympian with her body image, but shares the honesty about it. That's a good example of use for social media for a teen, to see some raw, real women, people, this applies to males also, that are sharing their journeys and their successes and their failures, right? Olympians are not all gold medalists or medalists in general. So I think we need to learn, it's not going away. So I think I'd like to take the realistic approach. We just need to teach them how to use it better. We need to explain to them every like you get is dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. It's a drug. Okay. Just like gambling, just like drugs and alcohol, right? We need to say, okay, you have a drug going every time you're on social media. And because your brain's growing, you're more sensitive and influenced by the drug of dopamine with the likes. We need to scientifically approach it for them and say, these are the reasons we have rules.
So good. And I love that you just said that. Yes, it is a drug. And so when we like succumb to the urge, then the desire for it will just get greater and greater. And again, just empowering them with that knowledge, and then some bumpers, screen limits. I heard you turn it off at night. Do not have it in your room, right? Because again, that urge might take over, and then we're interrupting sleep, which is so vital to our health as well. And I also love what you said, diversify your feed. Have that be people that look different than you, then talk different than you, that are from different walks of life. I think that that's so valuable.
And can teach you something. You like to cook. Okay, follow some chefs. You like to swim. Follow people to maybe teach you a different technique that are not in bathing suits to show you their bikini, but they're in bathing suits with a strong body teaching you a skill. I mean, there's so much out there. We can use it for good. Yes, wait. The longer you can until you get down this messy road, please wait. Anxious Generation, amazing book, should be required reading for parenting. Love it. But if you're already in it, which a lot of your listeners probably are, I'm in it, stuck in it with my kids. Then you have a kid go to college. I mean, hello. They're just an adult at 18, but I love you, dear child, but your brain's still growing. It's messy, but we can do better. And we are constantly learning how we can guide them and share with them and role model for them, that we don't just scroll. Sometimes they see me on my phone and I'm like, but look what I'm watching, and you flip it and I'm watching an educational video or I'm listening to a podcast. Like, yeah, I'm on technology, but I'm actually doing something productive.
Yep. They're watching. So let's give them a great thing to watch in our behaviors as well. Social media lends itself to such a great, and your example actually I think that social media can be doing a detriment to our girls' body image. We see these perfect, 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 and I'll go air quote, perfect bodies that are perfectly airbrushed and perfectly posed. And, that body image has always been a barrier, I think, for self-confidence. And certainly one that we as moms, we grew up in a different time. We probably are still struggling with some of it as well. How can we empower and equip our girls um, to know their body, to think highly of their body, to speak kindly to their body?
Well, if there was a simple answer, you and I would have given it, and no one would have to constantly be dealing with this every day. You and I both. I sit in the office every day and tell my patients I have body image issues, I have confidence issues. I come off confident, but that doesn't say what's going on inside my head. Just like half of these, and again, I have two boys I'm raising. Body image is across all genders, all sexes, it's everywhere. And I think under talked about, right, with the males. But back to your question. I think we have to teach ourselves to turn up the volume, and we talk about this in our program, on like our kind voice, our nice voice, something we would say to our friends.
I call
Like,
it the
you're
bestie
rocking
brain.
it. The what?
I call it the bestie brain.
Yeah, the bestie brain. That's cute. Okay, I'll borrow that. Right. And then turn down the volume on the negative piece, which takes practice. And for some, more practice than others. We, of course, have to constantly remind everything you see is not real, right? Photoshopping. We have to practice more of what Dr. Carey started with her girls from the get-go. I love the rule is you take a picture, you don't get to constantly look at it and do a redo. Just pretend you're taking a picture with the old school cameras we grew up with, and that's the picture. And that's the moment. And it's not like, is this postable? Is this not postable? That's just it. We captured a moment. Not everything looks perfect, is perfect. Okay. I joked with Leslie, I'm super honest and transparent, Leslie. So this morning I was like, hey, Leslie, is this on video? Should I shower, maybe throw on some lipstick, or can I come in PJs, no bra? There are times where it's obviously appropriate to feel more presentable and look different and dress up, but it's not 24/7. It's not the reality. So we all need to be kinder to ourselves and, of course, kinder to everybody else. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, whether it's negative stuff, right? Positive stuff, what's happening in someone's family, what's happening in someone's brain. Everyone's putting on a show, people. So what kind of show are they putting on today? But I wouldn't believe most of what you see.
Yeah, I love that. It all comes back to compassion for self, compassion for others. And that is true, not just when we talk about ourselves as our whole and our bodies, because that is the vessel that gets you through life. We can choose to speak kindly to it. We can choose to, just as you said about the Olympians, think about what our bodies do for us and how strong they are and how incredible they are that they can change the way that they do. And to be willing to accept those changes, particularly in those teen years when so much will be changing versus,
Yeah. We say in our program, okay, part of female puberty is you grow breasts, boobs. Why? Why do we grow breasts? Is it to wear a bikini? No. We grow breasts because breasts have a purpose. The purpose of breasts is to one day feed a baby. If we, choose to grow a baby inside of our uterus, we can then feed that baby for a really long time because our bodies are amazing and our bodies have a purpose. And the purpose is not to pose for a picture in a bathing suit. The purpose is to be a scientist and, invent amazing new ways to get to space or amazing new ways to cure cancer. Our purpose is to laugh and have fun with friends and feel good. Our purpose is to be a teacher. Our purpose is to be an athlete. Our purpose, right? Every part of our body has a purpose, and it ain't for taking pictures.
Yep.
Unless you're an amazing photographer, that is your purpose.
There you go. And as an amazing photographer, you'd see beauty in every subject. Yes. So I don't remember who had said it. And I wish I could give it a direct quote, but it might've been Mel Robbins of, how I look is the least important thing about me. And if we can model that, because again, they're watching, when we take the photo too, to ensure that we're not being critical of ourselves and pointing out all our flaws and all our ways that our shortcomings, to capture that moment, but to also just let them know that how you look is one facet of you. There is so much more to you.
Yeah. And a lot of us, as we raise teens, it's kind of cruel. We are entering our midlife, most of us, and our second puberty, menopause, and all of our own body changes and insecurities. And that's a whole nother talk. And that's more Dr. Carrie Luff's genre, because she's the women's health menopause expert for us at Turning Teen for Women, now we call it. But we, as we go through our own body changes, can again role model how to react to them. And you don't have to love them all. No one has to love every part of their body. That's not the message that you and I, are sharing. We don't have to say to your kid, love it all, love everything about you, everything's perfect. No, but we need to be kind to ourselves, and we need to find things we love about ourselves. And it's amazing to always have health goals, whether it's eat healthier, move our body more, study more, all sorts of different brain and body goals. But I don't want anyone to leave thinking, oh yeah, love everything, la la. No, again, we're in reality here.
Yep. And I always say that about the bestie brain. The bestie brain also wouldn't lie to you and say like, everything's great. It's not always rainbows and daisies, but the bestie would always be kind. The bestie would always acknowledge that maybe this is hard to love my body today, to love this today. And that's okay. But it would always come back to kindness. I appreciate that point so much, Dr. Lisa. Well, Dr. Lisa, we covered a lot of ground. I'll leave it to you to close out of the show of, one of the greatest hits that you would tell a mom of a tween or a teen, and how she can just empower her to get her or him. I talk a lot to my girls around here, through those years.
Communicate, be vulnerable, admit your mistakes, admit your flaws, admit what you're working on. Say, I don't know the answer. I love your question. Let's talk about it more. Let's find someone to help us both. Communicate, because if you don't have that communication and openness, why in the world would they use you as their resource? And again, be vulnerable. When you yell, apologize the next day if it wasn't, appropriate. When you give the wrong answer, say, hey, I talked to a buddy, or I read a book and I told you the wrong thing. Let's do a redo on that. And for the younger parents, people with younger kids, you can, just because you parented a kid one way and did it one way, you don't have to do it the same way the next time. Every kid's different. And the world's evolving and our resources are getting better and better. So start it differently, build your foundation differently. And just ask for help as a parent, because we want our kids to ask for help for them. This is not easy. I mean, this parenting stuff, holy guacamole, as I like to say, it is hard stuff especially in this era of technology. So you better, be current and have your resources ready and use them. And we're all in it together. So we all have things to share and learn. And, our goal is to all help our kids, hopefully, be awesome by the time they're us.
Yeah. And what an awesome world it would be if they were all empowered and educated and,
Confident.
confident, yeah, and compassionate to themselves and to others. Well, I agree. They can be hard years, but thankful to Dr. Lisa and resources like Turning Teen, we do not have to do it alone. You can consider it a one-stop shop for how to have those conversations for those tween years, those teen years, for yourself, for your kids. Um, I sometimes say that it takes a village. I'm so happy that Dr. Lisa is part of that village, that I get to be part of yours. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for all you do. I love that I can share you as a resource with all of the awesome things you offer. So let's keep the conversation going. That's
You
all
know
we
we
can do.
will. You know we will. My friends, why didn't they tell us that with education, with resources like Turning Teen, we can take those teen years that sometimes had a bad rap, but make them so much easier simply through connection and communication with our teens, with education and science-backed research and data to empower us to empower them. My friends, till next time.
Love what you hear? Well, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me at confidencecoachforgirls.com. That's confidencecoachforgirls.com. Or email me at lesliethelifecoach@gmail.com. That's lesliethelifecoach@gmail.com. Hope to hear from you.